it's Saturday. We're here on a regularly scheduled time of Saturday. It has been a long time. Excuse me, guys. I'm just going to move some stuff out of my way so I can move around. My desk has like so many papers and folders and all types of work on it. Um, yes, it has been a minute since we've had a Saturday moment. So I want to first go whoop whoop Saturday moment. We've had a very eventful August and end of June or end of July. I'm sorry, end of July. And very eventful August, which has led to plenty of Sunday moments. You guys know I'm always super grateful. I always let you know I'm so grateful whenever you guys move and shack and jive with me. Have some mommy mercy on a girl. I'm always super grateful about that. It is a major, major, major thing to follow your dreams and follow your heart. And then when you're a mom, and in my case, a single mom, and you are following your heart while you have five other hearts and more, because they've added people to the mix to look after and tend to. It is always just a blessing when people have reserved grace and mercy for you to continue to follow your passions and dreams, support you in that, and show up for you in immeasurable ways. So I'm just saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Always saying thank you. Welcome to a moment of harmony again, people. We are in meiotic moments. We have come through a series of different moments, and meiotic moments is by far my favorite, most challenging, most pulling and demanding moments to produce. But I am super excited and blessed to be called to do such. In meiotic moments, we are going through the 42 laws of Mayat. We have made them applicable to our day to day. Peace. Thank you so much, King. We have made them applicable to our day to day. We have used some tools to be able to get wherever it is that we need to get. Peace, blessings, everybody. Thank you for coming. Peace, peace. Hey, Mr. Carter. And so it has been a beautiful journey. We are 12 weeks in today. We are at Mayat, the 42 laws of Mayat. We are at law number 12. And 12 weeks is no small feat, right? For going into your character, to going into your contents of what you are made of, looking into them, revising them, putting pieces together in order to be your greatest and grander self. I am super proud to be a part of this journey with you. Always honored to be a part of your self-care routine. Honored to be an exchanger with you where we can learn and grow together, because I'm always super excited about the learning and growing, empowerment, enlightenment, and upliftment of us and what all of that it entails and the road together. So thank you, thank you. Welcome to all my chat members. The chat is already jumping. First off, let me say, a moment of harmony broke numbers last week in views. Okay, I was sitting over here like afterwards and getting checked in, getting text message from friends and family members like, have you seen how many views? I am so abundantly, humbly grateful, and just be overflowing with joy and gratitude for the support. I know that everyone that comes on a moment of harmony is not always intending to be supportive, but y'all know how I feel. It's all energy. It's good energy or no energy. You know what I'm saying? When only good can live here. So if you come here, you're adding. That's how that works. If I allow you to stay, you're only adding. So thank you so much for being a part of this journey. Let's get on into this moment, y'all, because this moment is going to be a juicy one. Oh, I don't want to say juicy like gossip, but big. Like, it is a major law. And I, being a part of today's world, know that it is going to bring about a great deal. Oh, Mommy Mercy, Kingdom. King, I can hear Dream in my stream. Ha, bars. Mommy Mercy, y'all. That's Grandma Mercy, actually, because that little one, whoo, too old for that. But just wanting to get into saying, like, it's going to be one of those. So bear with me, walk with me. Again, every time we're going through the meiotic principles, the meiotic laws, this again comes from a spiritual practice system that I've studied, and that I've studied under those that are experts and facilitators of Mayat, of Kemetic culture. And I am sharing my wisdom. I am sharing my lessons. I am sharing my experiences, not in judgment, not in any type of coercion or conversion, but only in means to bring us to a greater place of healing and development, bring us to a better and greater place of growth. I'm sorry. Kingdom, just get Wisdom to pick her up. She's fighting him back. Sorry about that. Mommy Mercy again. Um, but just getting us to a better place of growth and development. So again, no judgment, no pressure, no stress. I am not asking anyone to move away from what they subscribe to or what they believe in. That is all your personal journey with you and yours. I am saying thank you for joining me here. Thank you for being a part of my platform. And on this platform, we are going to go through cultural systems, cultural practices, more akin and aligned with self in order to grow and develop self and grow and develop self in monumental and incredible ways. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your open-mindedness, for your receptivity, and most of all, for your respect on my channel. Okay? Thank you. Now, let's go on and get into it. Our 12th law states, I have not committed adultery. The 12th law, the 12th week that we're in, I have not committed adultery. And oh my, oh my, oh my. Yeah, now let's get into it. So I knew that this was going to be a, first off, I know when it comes to a lot of the laws, right? When it comes to the 42 laws, when it comes to any types of principles, ammunitions, things of that nature, a lot of the culture that was left to us, a lot of the lessons that were left to us, a lot of people take them very literally. And I always reiterate this: they take them very literally, and they always begin to feel like they cannot, that most of them don't apply to them. That these are things that they are above or that they just don't do. And I would just always also like to reiterate, our ancestors were brilliant. Those that came before us, those that set a path for us, those that lived before we did, those that are pillars and bricklayers of civilization and humanity. They know a thing or two, and they would not need to leave certain things for us to grow through, for certain things for us to harness or master, if they weren't going to be things we would struggle with. And the greatest of all of us and the most wonderful of all of us are still having some fractures and some fragility in our characters and in our development, because we live in a very society, anti our way society, and we live in a very dysfunctional and backwards operating place, morally dysfunctional and morally deficient society. So it is never a bad idea to revisit your morals. It is never a bad idea to go back inside of self, check with self, and just saying, look, as much as I know and as much as I've grown, is there more room for growth? Is there more room for development? Is there more room for improvement? Shout out to PLM and UIP, improvement is always possible. That's a youth program that I used to facilitate. So just saying, like, listen, we can never grow too much. You can never know too much. You can never grow too much. Okay? So let's get on into it. I have not committed adultery. I think there's going to be a number of, peace, beloved, there's going to be a number of single people who feel like this does not apply to them. Stick with me. There's going to be a number of married people who have never been unfaithful in their marriages, who may feel like this does not apply to them. Stick with me. There's going to be a number of people who may be feeling like they're not even thinking about it. Peace. Stick with me because we're going to get through this law together, okay? All right, I have not committed adultery. I would like first to start off with the textbook definition of adultery, which is voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person and a person that is not his or her spouse. Voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person and a person that is not his or her spouse. Now, this is textbook definition of adultery, because one of the things that make it so hard for us to get on, to learn our history and our culture, one of the things that makes it so hard for us to fully grasp ideals, standards, laws, rules, things like that, is that we all come from so many different backgrounds and perspectives. We have so many different definitions and understandings of how things work. Not a bad thing, just very chaotic and confusing when we all trying to get on one page together. And since we're all on the Moment of Harmony page, I am going to give that definition that I believe most people have. And then I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of spirituality on that, so that we can get to a different place together of honing and tuning in to this law and what it really means to our character and our development and our betterment and improvement of our lives, of our relationships, of our connections, and the divinity within. Okay, so voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person and a person that is not their spouse. One of the first things that I think causes people to cut themselves short when it comes to adultery, causes them to cut themselves short in their ability to grow and develop into a stronger, more focused, more disciplined, more divine being, is this society greatly believes that you're either married or you are not. You're either married or you're not. I can't tell you, especially since I've been in the single pool for over a year now. I can't even tell you. It's been a minute. Since I've been in the single pool for a long time, I can tell you that everyone believes you're either married or you are not. Now, I am not saying that's not true. I am not saying that that is not a thing. I'm not here to dispute that. I do believe very highly in marriage. I do believe that marriage is a very different and sacred institution. I believe that if you take it that far, you are in another realm. However, the only issue that I have with that is that if you're not married, there seems to be an insignificance in the loyalty and the faithfulness, or confusion there as it pertains to you being committed and connected to the person. Now, I want to say all of that, and not that I want to confuse anyone, but your girl is very broad when it comes to life, when it comes to connection. I do know that there are polygamous relationships. I do know that there are polyamorous. I know all that stuff is out there. I'm not speaking against it. I'm not saying anything against it. I have my own thoughts on monogamy and the workings of it and the amount of intention that needs to go into successful monogamy. So I will say, with all that being said, obviously, in order for all of that to be said, we have to be able to acknowledge the complexity of it all, right? That's extremely complex. You're talking about a million different components, and therefore that one definition that we talked about, that textbook definition of voluntary intercourse between a married person, a person that is not their spouse, that kind of has a lot of loopholes to fall into if we go into the vastness of society and the vastness of operation. What are our ancestors talking about? The vastness of society and the vastness of operation. Our ancestors were talking about us. They were talking about our way. They were talking about our intended way. They were talking about peace, communal living, communal peace and flow, harmony thing. They were talking about Mayat. They always were talking about Mayat. You know what I'm saying? So they're talking about the balance of things. How are we keeping things in alignment? And I want us to keep that at the forefront of our mind as we continue to play with some of these definitions or go into some of these definitions and ideas together. So again, one of the first things that disrupts that textbook definition is that this idea that you're either married or you're not. So there's a lot of people that believe, I am so sorry. There's a lot of people that believe that, again, you're either married or you're not. Sorry, people are trying to call in and send messages, and it is so disruptive to the moment, but we're going to keep it going. So this is where I want to come in with the spiritual component of it all. So you're either married or you're not, which means that only if you have a legally binding contract to someone do you have to consider this law of I have not committed adultery. I would like for us to think about this in terms of a crime. right? A major crime. I say a really big crime like murder, probably the worst crime you could commit. Um, there are things that are not considered a crime that lead up to murder. Because when we talk about crimes, we're really just talking about the legalities of things. And this is very similar when we're talking about being married or not married. So let's say murder is a major crime. Domestic violence, depending on how, so let's say domestic violence is a crime. Let's say there's a new term that we just have been going over that was in my reading circle. Shout out to the Unbroken Reading Circle. We're reading Jada Pinkett's Worthy, and there is a term that Jada uses, emotional violence. Okay, I love that. Okay, emotional. I don't love emotional violence, but I love the terminology because it is so accurate to what happens with imbalance and injustice in relationships, emotional violence. So let's say you have actual violence like murder, that is a crime. And then you have something like emotional violence that is not a crime. You cannot call the police and say, my spouse has been giving me the silent treatment. My spouse has been using money or threats to control me. My spouse has been calling me out of my name. It's not a crime, right? Is it bad? Yes. Can it lead to a crime? Absolutely. Emotional violence, 9 times out of 10, will begin to lead to some type of physical issue. Whether it is a person physically leaving, whether it is a physical altercation, and those things that can lead to things like death and murder. So I want us to look at it in this way. When we hear people say you're either married or you're not, as it pertains to loyalty, as it pertains to your spiritual character, because remember, we're talking about our character and our development. We're not necessarily talking about in the court of law, will your character stand up to the laws at present. When we're talking about the laws of Mayat, we're saying that in the court of judgment, will your heart stand up to the weight requirement, which is light as a feather. So when we are thinking about that in that regard, I want us to really like sit back a bit and just not be so caught up in like what I'm in the scale of how bad is what I'm doing, or in the scale of like how big is what I'm doing, because little things lead to big things, little things reflect big things, and little things, every big thing started out as a seed. And I think spiritually, when we're going into our ancestors and we're going into their teachings and we're going into our way, we don't even want to plant seeds. Forget a tree of abuse, a tree of dysfunction, a tree of chaos, a tree of unhappiness. We don't even want to plant the seeds. And so I want us to think about that when we are again attempting to grow and develop ourselves in a society that has such low standards for spiritual beingness. When we are attempting to grow and develop ourselves in a society that has such low standards for moral standards and moral operation. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and we are never to allow the physical to define our spiritual angling, our spiritual operation, our spiritual functioning. We will suffer. We are suffering. We do suffer as a people, definitely as a community. And as a time frame, as an era in history, we are suffering because we are constantly trying to make this demarcation. And I want us to be able to go into these laws understanding we don't want to demarcate. We don't want to demarcate from our ancestors' teachings and the laws and the principles therein. And we don't want to deviate in any type of form, any form or fashion, for just to be able to fit into something temporary, something short term. Because again, we're talking about planting a seed of destruction that will continue to grow and bring up blockers, walls, pitfalls, quicksand for our growth and our development. We don't want that. So I want us to change our thinking for those of us that have ever subscribed to that thought, or for those of us that are, even those of us that are married, or for those of us that think of adultery in this very linear way of, what was the textbook meaning? Voluntary sexual intercourse with person that is not your spouse, right? For those of us that have been born and bred here and have seen adultery in that way, I want us to reshift our thoughts around marriage. Again, because I think that a lot of married individuals and a lot of single individuals do not see the significance of this law in the way that you are doing things, in the building of your character, and in the drawing of your manifestations. So, instead of us being in the mindset of you're married or you are not, and that adultery only pertains to a certain percentage of people, I want us to all think about marriage in this way: you are either married or you are in marriage training. And whether you ever want to get married or not, whether you're thinking about marriage or not, I really am saying, when I'm talking about marriage right now, I am talking about the merging of higher and lower self in hopes or in alignment with possibly merging with someone else's higher and lower self. Now, whether or not, like I said, you're in going in that direction, thinking about that direction, coming out of that direction, I want you to put self in the equation. Self is the divinity, self is the sanctuary, right? Self is the sanctuary that all things grow out of, all things are manifested out of. So I want us to be out here thinking about, we either are married or you're in married training. If you are married, so I want to think of those individuals that may be in some type of academy, like police academy, or boot camp, like military boot camp. When you are in military boot camp, when you are in the police academy, do you still wear a certain uniform? Do you still have a certain type of language? Do you still present yourself in a certain way as an alignment with the goal you're going to? You do. You know why? Because you're in a training for a specific level of graduation that you will reach once you've successfully completed your training. So again, I want us to shift this perspective of being either married or not married. I want us to shift this perspective of adultery being so linear as to having intercourse with someone that we're not married to. And I want us to be able to look deeper into the fact that marriage is not just this document of law. It's not this legal document. It's not just a ring. Are not just a commitment between two people. This is we're going to talk about marriage being marriage training versus marriage. So marriage training is okay. So marriage training, and a lot of times many of us are in relationships that we're not married in. So I want to also carve out that little niche, right? Where I've been literally all, except for I've only been married once. So every one of my relationships have been long term. That where I wasn't married. So to say that where our ancestors are taking us is not significant in any form would be very inaccurate. From my studies, from my teachings of Mayat, it just would be inaccurate. And that's why I want to highlight that a little bit. So when we talk about marriage, we're talking about you plus me. When we talk about marriage versus marriage training, we're talking about you plus me, which would be the marriage training, versus you and me, which would be marriage. So you plus me in the marriage training, and then you and me in marriage. And these are two different perspectives that often we are operating in at any given time. This is because some married people are are in a marriage training because they had never done that initially and still are training for marriage while they're in it. I know this all sounds like a lot. Stick with me. We're going to get through it because I want us to be able to see how this I have not committed adultery is not just a simple this is not a simple in and out law, okay? Marriage, which is you and me, versus marriage training, which is you plus me. So when we're all in marriage training, we are still learning ourselves. And when we get married, we don't ever stop learning ourselves, but we're learning ourselves as an individual. We're learning our likes and dislikes. We're learning our needs and our desires. We're learning our do withouts. We're learning our deal breakers. We're learning our traumas. We are learning our triggers. So, being in a training for marriage puts you in a mind state to really be able to marry yourself first. This is why I say you plus me versus you and me, because these are two very different concepts. And sometimes we take one concept into another operation and it becomes very detrimental to the institution itself, but also to us. Unfair to us, unfair to those of us trying to really grow and understand ourselves from one transition to the next, right? And the truth of the matter is, you marry yourself before you can marry anyone else. You are married to yourself before you can marry anyone else. And in the marriage training component, when people are in that place, they are still in a place of getting to be one with themselves, getting to be one with all that they are, getting to be one with all that exists within them, like really tuning into self, connecting with self, being committed to self, being responsible for self, prioritizing self. That is so important, because I know there's a lot of people who have desired marriage, looked for marriage, grown towards marriage in some ways, and have not yet even mastered those things with themselves. I am one of those people, right? I am big on, like, yeah, I'm ready to be a wife, or I'm wife material, but still struggle with putting myself first. Still struggle with putting up standards and boundaries necessary for myself. Now, we're growing and working through those things daily, right? Those will not be problems for long. But what I am saying is, we make this mistake to go into this institution imbalanced in a way that we think is going to bring about balance and harmony in our life, but we're walking into a certain institution already imbalanced, marrying someone before you've ever married yourself. So this is the marriage training. So for those people, or those of us that are dating people, that are in relationships with people we aren't married to, or those people that have gotten married physically but have not emotionally merged, though not physically or spiritually, I would say emotionally, spiritually, or mentally merged themselves with the other person. We're saying that adultery, I'm giving this point to say that the adultery starts in your first marriage. And I don't mean your first marriage to someone else. I mean your first marriage to self. There's this saying that I love. I have 6 siblings. I'm one of 7, number 3 of 7. There's a saying that your siblings are your first marriage, right? They're the first people you have to live with, you have to learn yourself, you have to grow with. There's a reason that this saying exists, because you do begin to create a loyalty with your siblings. You create a life with your siblings. You have a home environment that you share with your siblings, and you got a lot of, for better or worse, up in there with them people. And this saying, I agree with actually, but this saying really speaks to creating that environment within self in order to have successfully merged with self before you can go and merge with anyone else, right? So, a lot of people have not first gone into the you plus me successfully, and therefore never make it to the you and me. A lot of us take the you plus me and we see that as the connection. We see that as marriage. We see that as the end all of this whole situation. And it is a graduation from me plus someone else in my life to me and someone else in my life. And I can't get to a me and someone else until I am a complete me. So I want us to think about this as like a algebraic or a mathematical equation, right? So when they say, like, are you trying to add you have to turn a fraction into a whole number before you can add or subtract in in the mathematical equation. And many of us aren't doing that, right? We are fractions and we're trying to add on and we're trying to make a whole number. And a lot of times we're adding with another fraction. And a lot of times we're bringing in the history and trauma of other circumstances. So we're bringing in a couple of letters and numbers with us. And we've turned a very simple equation into a very, a very algebraic equation. What I am saying here is that if you start now, wherever you are, and you begin to see yourself in marriage training, if you begin to walk through the possibilities for those that are married, have you gone through that step within yourself? You will have to ask yourself first, have I ever committed adultery with me? If I'm my first marriage, if I'm my first, have I ever been voluntarily intimate with someone outside of myself when I should have been taking time and space to be only intimate with self? Have I ever known? Have I ever, again, mastered? Have I ever been focused and centered in the intimacy, the love, the unconditional, everything that we ask for in marriage? Forgiveness, understanding, stability, financial wealth and togetherness and cohesiveness. Have we done that in the simplest of forms with just one and one before we begin to add something else onto our equation? And I want us to really think about this because it's easy to say, oh, I've never committed adultery and I've only been married one time, and I've never cheated a day in my life. I have my own stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. I definitely have my. I'll go step out of somebody on a situation real quick. Growing and working through that. But what they say, a runner and a track star. Okay. But that has not been a thing that I've done. But as I look deeply into commitment and relationship, I am continuously understanding this law to say I have not committed adultery. And right away, this law makes me think about someone else. This law makes me think about, have I ever abandoned someone else? Have I ever gone against my vows to someone else? And then it started to make me think, our ancestors in balance in Mayat could not have possibly meant this law to pertain to only someone else. This law had to first start within self, just like all development, because our ancestors gave us one of my favorite laws of all, or favorite lessons of all: know thyself. Know thyself. So when I am in marriage training, which we all should be, no matter what your stance on marriage is, no matter what your position in marriage is, am I in marriage training? Am I well versed in loyalty and commitment, discipline and focus with self? Am I well trained on being in tune with source in a way that I will not behave outside of myself for any external situation? Have I settled that within myself? Period. And then that only does manifest and grow into the connection with someone else. But I want everyone to keep this in mind. You plus me, which is marriage training, is merging of self in or the merging of yourself as it pertains to others. I'm sorry. Let me not mix it up because I'm about to confuse myself. Okay. You plus me. This is the marriage training component of us existing. This is the marriage component. This is, what is it that I am looking for? What is it that I possess? What is it that I stand on? What are my values and my goals and my morals as they pertain to me, as they pertain to my life? So this is the merging of others in relation to yourself. This is the step before marriage. This is the step before external commitment, or this is the step before braiding. This is the merging with others in relationship to myself. Guys, we all need that space and time. Everyone needs that rites of passage. Everyone needs that type of training. This is me getting to know other people. This is me growing with other people. This is me being in connection with other people in order to reflect where and who I am, what it is that I need to work on, or where I need to be. Now, I'm not saying use people, but I'm saying understanding appropriately the stage that you are in of marriage and marriage training. If we were honest and upfront about where we were with these things, these possibilities of adultery, these possibilities of treason or betrayal, they would be diminished greatly. And we could stop and say, have I connected with others in a way that further helps me relate and grow with myself? Many of us do not. We go into relationship with others of like validation. We want companionship. We want validation. We want status. We want pleasure. We want joy. But not many of us will connect with anyone saying, I am coming in this wanting to be a part of you better learning yourself and me better learning myself. That is a whole nother level of grace, of bandwidth for growth and development. That is a great space for training. When I'm going into a situation, even if I'm in a solo place like myself, or I'm brand new starting something with someone, I would like to merge with this person. This is marriage training. And in relation to myself, my self-development, my self-growth, myself. Then once I build that to that degree, once I build that person, and I build that understanding, and I build that security, because many of us, we start, we feel insecure, we feel unstable, we're quick to be broken down, we're quick to be, tattered or worn in a committed marriage, because we have not first been in training with ourselves. We have not first been through that course with self. We all know what it's like to set a goal for ourselves and to not make it. And then we beat ourselves up and we tear ourselves down. We haven't even learned grace with self, right? We haven't even learned and mastered nurturing self, revision with self, forgiving of self, unregretting or non-regret with self. But we think that we can go into a marriage with another person and not commit adultery. And in the sense of adultery, again, the textbook is voluntary sexual intercourse. But I am using and saying adultery as the betrayal. A betrayal, which ultimately does lead to some types of physical situation, right? So we have not gone into any of these places with self, and we have not merged with others. We have, a lot of times we put children in preschool. Those of us that have heard of preschool, Ashe Baba, thank you so much. A lot of us, we put children in preschool, and many of us will say that we put children in preschool not because preschool is going to be so academically extensive, but because we want them to start to socialize before it starts to matter so much in kindergarten. We don't want them learning to keep their hands to themselves. We don't want them learning to speak up. We don't want them learning to use the bathroom or potty train in kindergarten. So we put them in a preschool so that they begin to hone skills and put themselves in an advancement, a social advancement for a very important stage, which is the first year of school. Now, we will apply and training and learning and workshops to everything in life almost, except for marriage and parenting, right? We don't put a lot of focus in pre-parenting. We don't put a lot of focus into premarital engagements. And I would also go as far as say we don't put a lot of focus into like pre-communal engagement and social exchange, but that's a whole nother story. So you plus me is marriage training. It is necessary. It is vital, and it is okay to be in that type of space, aware of that type of space, intentional of that type of space, and communicating about, you know what, I keep saying is you and me to the end of the road, you and me forever, is you and me. I have never gotten out of you plus me. And I keep saying this, setting up yourself for adultery, setting up something bigger for betrayal because you haven't even been consistent with self. I keep saying like till death do us part. Death do us part. When I've parted with myself on so many levels, on so many occasions, on so many times, when I've given up myself and take the back seat with a back burner, I've given up my morals or my values to be more pleasing or to be more accepted, I am proclaiming till death do us part with this major institution like marriage and family that comes with community. I'm saying that I can hold this all together. I can honor this. I can commit to this. I can sustain this, but I have never been in a course. The course is self. I have never been in a successful course of merging. I have never been in pre-marriage. And I don't look at pre-marriage as pre-marriage. Sometimes, again, like I said, we look at it as companionship. We look at it as being with, having somebody to have fun with. We look at it as, especially when we get into situationships, that is a whole nother level of toxicity and dysfunction that we'll need a whole nother moment to go into. You know what I'm saying? I have been committed to the merging of others in relation to myself. I have first not defiled the sanctuary of self before I was ever expected to have focus and discipline and commitment to something outside of self. Excuse me. So adultery, I have not committed adultery in this sense of marriage training, starts with self. So again, for those like myself who would say I've never cheated, and I haven't. But if I put adultery, if I see myself as a marriage with self, within self, if I see myself as a successful marriage that will dictate a successful marriage, then I have to say, wow, Harmony, have you always been true to yourself? Have you voluntarily had sexual intercourse with someone outside of yourself before you were whole and complete, connected with self, good with self? Now, so you plus me, marriage training. You and me is the actual marriage component that we want to grow to. That's where we want to one day be. That's where a lot of us are perpetrating being, whether we're married or not. We always are you and me. There is no you and me. Again, you cannot add and subtract and multiply you gotta always turn a fraction into a whole number before you can do anything with it. But many of us are walking around as fractions thinking we're going to get an equation, right? A whole equation. So if you plus me was merging with others in relation to self, you and me becomes merging of self in relation to others. Okay. Hey DJ, run that back. Okay. Marriage training. The merging with others in relation to self. I'm merging and I'm learning myself through learning the world and learning others. This is a grace period. This is a training ground. This is a sacred space that should be allowed and acknowledged, honored, and supported. And prioritized. That will lead to the you and me, which is the merging of self. This is when I've brought myself together. I'm one within self. Higher and lower, physical and spiritual are one. This is when marriage For those that think that they're in a marriage because this legally binding, um, and those that define this law based on a legal binding, you, merging of self in relation to others, merging of others in relation to self, marriage training, merging of self in relation to others, marriage. So now I have merged myself. I am one with myself. I have worked diligently, not saying I've arrived, but I understand who I am. I understand what I need. I have peace with my behavior. I am practical and operative in my character. I have a merging of self that is solid, that now can bless me with the ability and the capacity to relate to others. Yeah, I know I broke down a whole equation for marriage and marriage training, but it is so necessary for where I'm going when it comes to this law, this 12th law. I have not committed adultery. A lot of people think that adultery starts in a marriage to another person. Remember we talked about seeds and trees. It starts in the marriage to yourself. So in order for us to be able to adopt, in order for us to be able to be successful in a law like I have not committed adultery, we got to know where the root, we got to get to the root of it, like all things, right? So I have merging of myself in relation to others. I have, you want to be very diligent, honest, and and processing, like use the process of one stage to the next to the other. It's not just, oh, I'm in love. Like I'm in love and I love this person and I know I can be dedicated to this person forever. There will come a time, if there is a fracture between your higher and lower self, where you will have to choose saving yourself. Ask me how I know. You will have to choose, you will have to betray someone in some way in order to show up for yourself. Because you have a fractured self, because you have a fragile self, because you have a disconnected self, it is going to be inevitable. And I would love for us to get to a point where we are not skipping steps to major obligations that will be doomed to fall and doomed to crumble under improper measurement. Improper measurement. And by improper measurement in this context, I mean not being guided, measured, and stabilized on the foundation of my act. So I want us to, once we move past this point of understanding, I can never truly be one with anyone if I have not yet mastered oneness with self. I want us to then talk about what happens when we do feel like we've mastered oneness. We have healed so much. We've done so much work. We've grown so much. We're committed, meaning that when I say committed, I mean, I know that listen, in this dating game, first off, it's garbage. This is a crazy. But in the dating game, being quick to just be like, I'm not going to not compromise with people, but not waive on your standards in a way that is again going to make you have to show up for yourself later, because this is something that greatly impedes or interferes with something you should be loyal and committed to within yourself, your word, your dignity, your standard. You know what I'm saying? So I want us to see adultery as a conflict of interest. Saying all of that to say a conflict of interest. Even in the dating game, I am eager to stay to self in this time frame, because anything that is going to cause me to invest outside myself in a non-reciprocal way is a conflict of interest. Anything that will cause me to invest outside of myself in a non-reciprocal way becomes a conflict of interest. Because if I have to do that, that means I'm not thinking of you, or you're not thinking of me in a way, you're not considering me, you won't be beneficial to me in a way that will cause this whole thing to be a well-oiled machine. So that to me becomes a conflict. I don't look at people anymore as like good or bad, good catch, bad catch, possibility, not a possibility. I look at, do we have a shared interest of me and you? Do we have this shared interest of me and you? When our ancestors say, I have not committed adultery, we're talking about millions of marriages that have not been built on the shared interest of each other. He has his own interests, something young and pretty, and or good home cooked meal, or what on a shelf. And then she has her own interests of financial stability and children, a father for the children, and a home, or what have you. Somebody to fix the fans. I don't know. But my thing is, anytime we're talking about going outside of what it is that we have, we see this as a conflict of interest. Now, many of us who have ever worked in a company, and we wanted to work in another company that was in the same lane as that same company, the jobs will tell you you cannot work with any other company that offers what we offer, because it becomes a conflict of interest. Meaning that you can, what they're saying is that you cannot serve both interests evenly and balanced. You cannot serve both interests appropriately if you are getting if you're getting the same benefit from both. So, or I'm not going to say getting the same benefit, if you can possibly get a benefit either place. Okay, that's what I'll say. If you can get a benefit either place. So let's say Walmart. Kmart is not really so big anymore, but there was a time when Kmart was probably about as big as Walmart or close, and you couldn't work at Walmart and Kmart, or you can't work at Burger King and McDonald's, because the fear would be, if you worked at them both, you would not champion or focus or have an interest in one over the other. You would be in a conflict of interest. When we think about, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm not going to, what is it? Thank you. So sorry. Mommy mercy. It is nothing crazier than trying to go into your moment with someone literally standing right there staring at you, waiting and shaking themselves to be like, stop talking so I can ask you about this peanut butter jelly sandwich. Forgiveness. Okay. Conflict of interest. When we talk about adultery, when we talk about being intimate, between someone that you are, between intimacy between a married person and someone that they are not married to, like the textbook definition, we are essentially talking about a conflict of interest. I want us to be able to see this conflict of interest as a self-reflection, because a lot of people are going into adultery because they have left the institution of marriage, that is a learning ground, that is a growing ground, that is a sacred ground for development. First off, I don't know that we're all singing marriage that way, but marriage is an institution, like a university. You have come to learn, you have come to gather, you have come to contribute, and then you have come to grow. Marriage is an institution, simply put, like a university. And a lot of times we don't see it like that. And when we get into the university of marriage and it becomes difficult and it becomes challenging and it becomes confusing and it becomes frustrating, we would like to leave the university to continue our course of lesson. So we think that we can go somewhere that is less complex, or we can go somewhere that is less confusing, and we will learn there. You're going to leave a learning institution to go to another place where you think you are going to escape learning and growing. And I know adultery, a lot of people are putting it on a simpler scale. Like, ain't nobody talking about going to learn and grow. They talking about going to connect, feel appreciated, feel seen, get some rocks off. It is never ever that simple. I always am saying, when it comes to the physical and the spiritual, you may trick those that are in a physical operation that you are simply indulging in a physical act. But you will never, ever, 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 ever trick a spiritual being that you have successfully separated the two. You'll never do it. I'll never be convinced. For those that are binge eaters, obese, overeaters, or those that are big in smoking and drinking, or anything, any type of addiction or intoxication or overindulgence, and people want to tell you it's just a physical thing. You only drinking because you just need a break, you need to relax, and you want to tell me there's no spiritual connection. Or you're only eating that way because you're hungry, you like the way things taste, so you're addicted to sugar. That is not the sole reason why you're connected the way that you are connected. And so what I am saying is that if you leaving your institution for learning, which is marriage, in order to go continue learning in a a whole nother arena, not only comes down as a conflict of interest, because you can't, there's a lot of people that feel like they can just, be in one or the other. It's not only a conflict of interest, because if you can get a benefit, this is the whole logic behind jobs not letting you work in the same lane somewhere else. If you can get a benefit in either place, you will not invest or prioritize what it is that it should be the focus. And I've seen it happen all the time. I can't tell you how many healing sessions I've been a part of, or even coworkers just communicating with people who have been in these types of marriages, who are in these types of situations, who are in these types, bargaining for priority, bargaining for relevance, bargaining for significance, when you are supposed to be merged within self to a degree where you are not a bargainer of spiritual gain and divinity. You don't have to bargain, right? You may have to revise, you may have to reflect, but if you've merged with self, you are no longer bargaining about the valuables within and the valuables that you are willing to offer to someone else. So then you go into the institution, a major institution, again, of marriage, of family, of community, and you find yourself wanting to leave that institution of learning, wanting to leave the University of Maryland because, oh my God, these courses are having you stay up late. It started out easy. You understood everything. You liked all your professors, but then it just became so demanding and so arduous and then you decided that you were going to go and leave this university in order to continue your studies of life somewhere else. And you think that you're going to be able to balance self in such an equation. You have immediately created a very destructive conflict of interest. How are you going to sit in the study? How are you going to sit in the growth? How are you going to forge through the struggle if you are now taking up learning in a course that would take you away from the focus and the discipline here? I'm saying all of this to say, when our ancestors brought in this space of I have not committed adultery, or they brought in this law to us, it came to us for us to really understand that in our character, because all of these things are pertaining to other people, all of the laws that we've gone through include or in some way pertain to others and how we treat others, but it all comes down to the building of self, the upkeep of self. And so why is how we deal with adultery, how we deal with betrayal, how we deal with separation of ourselves and others so imperative to our development and our growth. And what I'm saying in this conflict of interest portion is that you begin to take away the benefit of self. Yes, there is benefit in something difficult. Yes, there is benefit in something challenging. Yes, you are growing. Yes, you are becoming. And if you are leaving the university of marriage, because it is a learning institution, marriage is a learning institution, and you are only struggling, see, because you will leave because you think you will struggle less with what you're looking for somewhere else. But you will only struggle less with what you're looking for when you are completely merged within self. Whatever you are missing, whatever you are lacking, you have not yet become solid within self. Now, I'm not saying there is no reason for divorce. I'm not saying that divorce is not an option. I'm not saying I know that there are spiritualists and religious doctrines and things that believe like absolutely no divorce. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you are committed and you begin to waver in commitment, a wavering in commitment is not a commitment anymore. Right? So you can't say, what Cube say, ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. You cannot be like, I'm somewhat committed. I'm committed because I pay the bills. I'm committed because I come home. I'm committed because I'll show up and be there for you. I'm saying that once we create the conflict of interest, first off, that conflict of interest starts in self. Like I said, with right now in dating. Starting to date people that I know are getting ready to create an unreciprocal investment for me. That's the first conflict of interest. And many of us will continue to move forward with that type of situation. And then you do move forward in that way. And then there becomes, again, the challenge and the complexity in commitment. Do not leave the institution for learning. You are the first student of love. You are the first student of your love. You are the first master of love. Do not leave that institution without first understanding where you are in marriage training versus marriage, and then being able to apply that to what it is you are committing yourself to honestly, openly, and with great vigor and strength. I want us to, before we get out this moment, because this is going into a long moment, I want us to be able to see, instead of being so caught up on I have not committed adultery, which I do. This is the law. I don't want us to go past the law. It's a great one. And just like all of them, it is a hard one because our ancestors dictated that we proclaim it at the beginning of the day, like I always say, and then we confirm it at the end of the day. This is for all of the 42 laws. I will not, I have not. Why is this necessary? Because you're talking about a great feat of self. You're talking about a great transformation of beingness. You're talking about a great growth into supreme leveling up, which is the ultimate goal, right? A great to grow in supremacy. For those of us that can see I have not committed adultery and just be like, yeah, I haven't done that, like myself. I haven't done that. Never done that. Never done that. Never done that. Won't do that. I want us to see it holistically. I want us to see it balanced. Yes, not only should you not be committing adultery in a marriage that you've committed to and promised someone, but have you first been committed and true to marriage training, which starts with self, and then it graduates into interaction with others, and then it graduates into exchange and commitment to others. I want us to be able to focus on, I have not married anyone before I've married myself. That's when we get into adultery, that's the whole gist of it. When I'm talking about, when I'm delving into what our ancestors are meaning, when I'm delving into where our ancestors are going with this, I have not married anyone before I married myself, before I'm secure myself, before I have healed myself, before I have loved myself, before I have addressed my wounds, before I have grown within self, before I have committed to discipline within health and holistic health and beingness within self, before I have demanded of myself, before I have actualized with myself, before I have slept with myself, held myself, coddled myself, created within myself, grown myself. I have not required that of anyone else. I have not went looking for that in anyone else. Because if I betray myself first, neglect myself first, silence myself first, shut myself down first, I am bound to leave up on off somebody else. I am bound to betray someone else. I am bound to hurt or to neglect someone else. Because a situation will surely arise where there will be broken parts of me exposed, and I will be forced to have a conflict of interest, which means I will be forced to show up for myself. And if I'm in a you plus me stage, that is going to be so much easier to do. And if I'm trying to get to a you and me stage, I want to make sure that that is something we have been trained to do together. But a lot of times we haven't been in that space with each other. So when we think about, I have not committed adultery. I want us to go into the word. I have not married anyone before I married myself. I have not married anyone. For those of us that would like to just make that more practical, make that more realistic, make it a focus that is actually possible for success and growth for yourself, as well as a healthy marriage, as well as not disappointing or destroying something beautiful. We've all been a part of something beautiful. And we were just children in something beautiful, or we were young in something beautiful. We were broken in something beautiful. I want us to get to the point where we don't have to say, or we can proudly say, I've not committed adultery. I am confident in that. I am certain in that, because I have not married anyone before I have married myself. I want us to look at the laws above, and we're going to get ready to get out of here. The laws above and below this particular law. This is law number 12. Law number 11 was, I have not closed my ears to the truth. Law number 13, which is next week, I have not made anyone cry. I have not closed my ears to the truth. I have not committed adultery. I have not made anyone cry. Our ancestors were mathematical, scientific, strategic, spiritual life geniuses. I would say life and afterlife geniuses. And the order in which they put this law is that I have not closed my ears to the truth. I have not stopped listening to myself. I have not stopped listening to others. I have not ignored the evidence. I have not, we talked about that. I have not inappropriately assessed my situation. I have not given up on what is real. Because a lot of times we want to talk about adultery, but we don't want to talk about all the components of it, all the proprietors of it, all the pieces of it, right? Our ancestors put, I have not closed my ear to the truth before I have not committed adultery. So we're working down these things, and we're open to honesty. We're open to truth and positioning. We're open to where we are in order to obtain what we need. And then after I have not committed adultery, it says, I have not made anyone cry. I have not shut off my third eye, or have not shut off my awareness to what is. I have not been stumbled, or I've not been married to falsity in order to then betray someone else. I have not listened to what things are. I have not seen where things are. I have not wished, like we talked about last week, wished or hoped the truth away. I have been very diligent and brave and courageous in what is, and able to fix and to nurture what is. And then it says, I have not committed adultery. I have not betrayed someone else. And I have not made someone cry. I have not been in denial, And I have not been cruel and unusual. I have these are literally laws 10 and 13. On 12, I have not committed adultery. I have not ignored the truth. I have not closed my ears to the truth. I have not been in denial. And I have not been cruel and unusual. And adultery is right in the middle of that. I say that to say, Master of the universe, Master of the universe, oh, how I submit myself to thee. Oh, how I submit myself to thee. Oh, how I grow in the wisdom and the greatness and the grandness of all that has been laid before me to grow and to contribute and to expand. I have not married anyone before I have married myself. Many of us are in an adulterous state, even if you haven't done anything to that nature. Many of us have adulterous seeds planted. We have adulterous ways of thinking because of the environments we were grown into, because of our first marriage being our family, I would say, or initial, because the first one is self, because we have abandoned self, because we have not known how to love self and connect to self. I have not married anyone before I've married myself. Adultery, you are bound for adulterous behavior because you have not first understood that you are going to be going into marriage as a university of love and life. And you have not prepared yourself, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, middle school, high school, to get to this university. The university of marriage dictates that you first have come through your primary state of learning, being, love, devotion, commitment, and focus. Please understand that if there are adulterous seeds somewhere in your environment, somewhere in your beingness, somewhere in your development, which this is a backwards dysfunctional society that is built just in that way, then you are going to want to greatly be able to get into this place, even if you're dead smack in the middle of a long marriage. Have I married this person before I married myself? Do we have adulterous seeds present in this connection? And those again that think that we're not married, being in boot camp does not mean you can't act the same way you need to act when you actually become a soldier. It doesn't mean that you are not in a process of moving towards an advanced university of love. I love you all so much. This has been a very extensive moment of harmony. I thank you all for being able to bear with it. Go on and walk with me through it. This is a big one. Adultery, oh my God, it's a big one. I thank you all and appreciate you all so much for being present, for exchanging, and having a moment with yours truly. I cannot wait to see you next week for another moment of harmony. You please take really good care of yourself and go on at your way to take a really good care of someone else.